Greetings. My name is Jeremy Bartles and I'm a full-time faculty member for Rasmussen College. And I'm going to walk you through today if you will, the anatomy and physiology of the microscope. Basically the different structural points on a microscope and then how to properly use it. So we'll walk through the procedure of how to use the microscope properly. So first off, what you notice with the microscope is that it has this large base and then it comes up over here. This is the arm of the microscope right here, right through here, and this is considered the base. Now this is the stability point of the microscope, and anytime you use the microscope, I should say move the microscope, you're going to lift it up by the arm and the base. You're always going to hold it and move it this way. Okay? So as you work up the arm, you'll see the ocular eyepieces here. Now the ocular eyepieces will adjust the width of your eyes. Okay? So everyone's got a little different width and different viewing points. There's no actual visual sort of adjustment here. It's just more for comfort to be able to see into the microscope with both lenses. Now we do have this little sort of locking mechanism that once loosened can adjust the ocular lenses to a different position. So make sure that's loosened up before you actually start to kind of swing it around. Otherwise you can strip that out there. Now you'll notice here with the nose piece of the objective lenses, this allows for the movement of our 4 objective lenses here. Okay, and you can hear that they lock into place. Now our lowest power objective lens is commonly referred to as scanning power. And so some references use low and scanning power as the same, but we'll say this is our scanning power. It's 4 times the magnification. And that's how we always start off viewing our slides. And we'll talk about that in part 2. The next power can be considered low or medium. In this case, we'll call it our low power. And that's 10 times the magnification. Our high power then is 40 times the magnification. And then we have one that's 100 times the magnification. That's our oil immersion lens. And we'll talk about that in part 2. Commonly, we'll just be using the scanning and low, the 10 time and 40 time magnification objective lenses. Okay? I'm going to put this back to the scanning one. Now you'll also notice this black stage here. This is appropriately referred to as the stage. And with the stage then we have the stage clips, which I'll get to here in a second. The stage clips ultimately lock or hold the slide into place that you're viewing. And these right here, these little dials, will turn the stage clips either left and right or up and down. So we can move the slide basically this way here. Okay? I'm going to rotate the microscope around here. Things view on this side here. Now another thing that we have right below the stage is called the condenser. And that just helps focus the light on the actual slide. And the condenser has its own little dial here. We want to make sure the condenser is all the way up. Okay? And excuse me, we don't need to get into much more detail than that. But underneath the condenser, right here is this little lever, and it's called the iris. And it basically is a filter for the light coming up from the light source, which is right here. Here's our light source right there. In the iris, you'll see the changes that the iris can produce in the amount of light being directed onto the slide there. So that's one way we can focus the light, along with the light source here, which we'll get to in a second. Now we do have this little kind of stage here. Sometimes there's a blue lens in there. If there is, you can take that out. We won't need that for any of our viewings. If there's not one in there, you can just kind of keep it locked into place there. Now one of the last pieces here is our light source. This turns on our light source here. You can see the light source come on. You can see the light shining up through the condenser into where the slide would be. So we can adjust the intensity of light here, along with the iris. And maybe if you can see here, where's that iris? Okay, so I don't know if you can see that light change, but I closed the iris actually, so there's very little light getting up into the microscope or the slide area. I'm opening up the iris and you can see how the light just kind of opens up there. So it's kind of like a filter or a blind of sorts there. I'm going to turn off our light source here. The last thing we have, so we have the stage adjustment here, which moves the stage up and down, left and right, pretty much for the microscope. We have our fine and coarse adjustment. The coarse adjustment moves the stage drastically. You can see here up and down. The fine-tune adjustment here just does minor changes up and down. Okay, so you've got to be careful which which adjustment you're using when you're under the certain objective lens, and we'll talk about that in part 2 of the video here. So hopefully this gave you a better overview of the microscope points and parts for when we go through how to use the microscope. Welcome to part 2 of the video. Part 2 of the video will demonstrate how to use the microscope properly. Now, one thing to note is that my arm and head may jump into the frame of the video occasionally in demonstrating on how to use the microscope, but the overall video should be focused directly on the microscope and the various different parts of the microscope and how to use them. So I apologize ahead of time if my head or arm is obscuring a particular view, but I'll try to avoid that as much as possible. Now, one thing that you'll note is that you'll see the microscope in the protective covering that the microscope has on it. This is just to protect dust and other sort of particles in its storage state. Now, when you move the microscope from wherever you may have it located in your lab, whether it's a cabinet or shelf, make sure you always grab it by the arm and the base when you carry it back to your desk. So you're going to set it down here. And then when it's set down, you can remove the little protective covering, and you'll notice the cord is wrapped around the microscope. You can carefully unwrap that. I'm making sure you don't swing it around and hit anything. Just carefully unwrap that. And before you plug it in, the one thing that you want to make sure is that the lighting source here, this lighting source, is off. And if you have an intensity dial, make sure that intensity dial is at its lowest setting. We don't want to harm the bulb or burn out the bulb. If that's all set, then you can plug in your microscope to the appropriate socket here. We'll set that off on the side. And then first thing to note is the ocular lens. Now, the ocular lens is in this state, and I'm not going to go on the other side of the table. Again, we can change that by loosening up that dial and having it adjust it to here. So I'm actually going to adjust it for my view right here. Now, you also note the stage here, and the stage should be at its lowest setting. And when it's at its lowest setting, you will notice that the scanning lens should be in place, clicked into place here too. So with that, if those two things are set, the scanning objective lens is set in its place, and the stage is at its lowest setting, you can grab your microscope slide, and what you're going to do is I'm going to turn it here a bit. You can see the little stage clips here. You're going to just set the slide on here and carefully place the slide, and the little stage clip is going to clip it in and hold it into place. Okay. So now that the stage has the microscope slide and the specimen we're going to look at, we can turn on our light source. So I'm going to turn on the light source very slowly, and you can see that light source come on there. Now I'm going to center, right here with our little dials, center the specimen, whatever we're looking at, into the light source there. Okay, so you're going to turn it left and right, up and down, and back and forth to try to center that slide into the light source there. Now, first step is to make sure you have it in scanning power again, and what we're going to do is raise the slide all the way up with the coarse adjustment. Okay, so it can't go any higher than this. Alright, so once we have it there, we know that we're okay as long as it's in the scanning power. If we switch over to like the low power here, it's still okay, but if we go to the high power, it's going to crack the slide and damage the objective lens. So we always start off in scanning power, and there's a number of reasons for that, which we'll elaborate on in the laboratory assignment. So once we're here and the stage is all the way up, you're going to peer into the ocular lenses, and you may have to adjust them so it looks like, so you can get it to its one view with both eyes. Now there's only one direction to take the slide stage, and that's down. Okay, so you're going to view in, and you're going to slowly, using the coarse adjustment, lower the stage slide down. And that, what you'll see is the slide, the specimen on the slide will come into focus. Once it's in focus, what you want to do is then scan around looking for a particular area that you want to enhance in magnification. Okay, so let's say right there is a spot on the slide that I want to view in more detail. So I'm going to carefully go to the next power, the low power, and I'm going to take a peek in here. Now it's going to look blurry again, and what you need to do is use the fine adjustment dials, not the coarse. So you only use the coarse adjustment in the scanning objective. Outside of the scanning objective, you use the fine coarse adjustment, the fine tune adjustment here. On this microscope, it's the purple. So you're going to go back a bit, and it looks like it's getting a little blurrier, and then you're going to go forward, and you're going to find that sort of focus point. So you're going to tune in and say, oh yeah, right there, everything's in focus. So it took, yeah, right there, everything's in focus there. Okay, so I only used the fine adjustment there. Now, once I'm in focus, I can slightly adjust where I want to focus into on high power. I can dial in and change the sort of view that I have here, and so let's say right there is where. So I'm going to switch over then to my high power, and you can see how close that gets to the slide. That's why we don't use the coarse adjustment. And I'm going to look in, and again, it's going to be a little blurry. And usually, in most cases, that when you're in the lower power, if you had to use the fine-tune adjustment like backwards to get it in focus, that's usually the same sort of direction you got to take it in high power. So now I have it in high power, it's in focus. I can still move the slide around and take a look at things. I don't get as much of a wide of a view, but I still can kind of cruise around and take a look at the different sort of parts of the specimen. Now let's say I lose focus in high power. Something happens, I can't get it in focus with the fine tuner. What I need to do is drop down to the next lowest power, in this case the low power, and see if I can get it in focus there using the fine adjustment. If I can't, I have to go all the way back to the scanning power and see if I can get it in focus there. I may even have to start all over, raising the slide stage all the way up and then lowering it down until it comes into focus and starting over with the process again there. Now, when you're viewing, whether in any objective lens, you can adjust the light source here, so you can change the light intensity here, so you can see how much the light intensity goes up from here to here. Okay, so there's quite a bit of change, and that's going to change sometimes what you actually can see on the slide in the specimen. So you might want to manipulate that and experiment with that. And then the other adjustment that you can have is with the iris. So you can change the iris, and the iris again allows a certain amount of light to go through. So you can see maybe the change in the light intensity there. So you can change that. Usually I keep it at about 75% open to start off with, around there. And so you can work with those two light sources. That can make a big difference, especially when you get up into the higher magnifications, and that can make a big difference in what you're seeing and what you're not seeing. Okay, so let's say you're done with this slide, or even done with the lab looking at the various different slides you are. What you want to do is go back down to the objective, scanning objective lens, and lower then the stage now. So you don't want to lower it down in high or low power. In case you're going the wrong way, you can break the slide and damage the objective lens. So you always switch back to the scanning power, lower it all the way down, open up the stage clip, and then let the slide down very carefully. And if you're going to do another different slide, you can put that slide on, let it lock into place, and go through those steps again. If you're all done with the lab, what you want to do is kind of maybe center up the stage clip so the arm of the stage clip is not protruding out very far, so get that centered in. You want to slowly turn off your light source, just like that, and then you're going to unplug your microscope, and you're going to gently, as it was, wrap it around the lower part of the base and the arm section, just like this. Wrap that around, and then you can tuck that into that area, and then you're going to place the cover back onto the microscope, just as this, and you're going to put it back into its original place using the base arm and using the arm and the base to carry it and lift it to where it needs to go. Okay? So one thing to note, always when you take it off, what you should notice from the previous user, the stage should be in its lowest setting, and the objective lens, the scanning objective lens, should be in that sort of position there. Okay? You can change this around if you want back to here, how it was, but just make sure it's locked into place and that you're careful with that. So hopefully this has given you some more insight on how to use the microscope properly and make lab that more enjoyable when you're using the microscope, since now you know how to use it properly.